So I got a couple of comments in YouTube videos asking about some modifications on the 525 that I got this past April. So I thought I'd just do a quick video and show you what those are. So here she is, all cleaned up. I went out for a fitness paddle today at our local lagoon and got her home and cleaned up. This is a 2021 model. So the first modification that someone asked about was the transducer mount. They currently have a ProFISHA and are waiting for 525, ProFISHA 525 to arrive in the East Coast container. So as shown in the Stealth videos, this does have the new fish finder mount. There's a standpipe that allows you to run your transducer cable right up into the fish hatch. There's a little EVA bung on top of there to keep water out, so that's really nice. And then I've got a FPV battery in there. In my opinion, that's the only battery you should consider. It lasts forever. Super small package. Haven't had any problems with it. And then as far as the transducer mounting itself, the modification that I've got is my transducer is mounted on the outside instead of up inside where the factory has got the recess in the hull. And the reason mine is on the outside is because I picked a transducer that did not come as a package deal from Garmin. This transducer is too long and a little bit too thick to fit inside the recess. It's a Garmin GT21 transducer, and the reason that I picked it was because I wanted to ping at low hertz, 50 hertz. So what I did was, there's a 5-bolt bolt pattern that you use to attach the transducer. So I just transferred that bolt pattern to this cover plate, drilled through the cover plate, and then there's little, I think they're like M4 or M3 screws that attach the transducer itself to the cover plate, then just bolted the cover plate back on. Works great. You can see that there's no scratches or anything like that on the transducer, so like when you come back into the beach, I've never had any problem with this thing hitting the beach or anything like that. It works really well. The second modification that someone had asked about, well, I did this quick fish hatch bungee strap that you see on most Stealths. But the second modification that I made, someone had asked about these bungees that are on top of my fish hatch, and that's not a new idea or my idea. That came from I watched a video from an Australian distributor, and they had something similar, so I did my own interpretation of this. I think that their bungee actually wrapped around their fish finder, but I didn't want to do that. So I just added in a couple of saddles here in the back, and then the bungees, I like to use hog rings. You can't see them because they're covered with heat shrink, but I just use hog rings to crimp the bungees. So 2 bungees in the back, 2 bungees up here as a guide, and then the last 2 bungees up here that basically make the loop of the kind of spring assist fish hatch. So with the fish finder, when you pop this thing open, it holds the fish finder open just fine. While I got it open here, you can see that I added an aluminum plate to give a little bit of backing for the carbon fiber fish hatch. That's just to mount the standard post that comes with the Garmin package. And without the fish finder, take this off. So I hold my fish finder down with the cradle with this little thumb screw. It's pretty easy to get on and off while you're on the water. And then that's the standard mounting post that you get from Garmin. So this is the standard post that you get with Garmin. And so without the fish finder, this bungee's a little too strong, and it wanted to flip all the way back. So I added this little lanyard bungee there, and so far it hasn't been a problem as far as being in the way with getting fish or getting rods back in. It's working out pretty good for me. So that was the second modification. And then the last modification that I did deals with the paddle leash. And so the first paddle leash that I had, I used like a coiled weed whacker line and anchored it to the kayak here at this saddle. And the first time I went out in the open water, I got absolutely clobbered and kicked out of the kayak on my launch. And what ended up happening was the leash wrapped around my leg, and it was like a garrote around my thigh. Not good. It really complicated trying to get back into the kayak. So watching another YouTuber video, Keen Fisha, aka the Carnster, and I saw that he had a bungee running up to the bow of his, he's got a 525, and I sent a comment and asked, hey, what's that bungee for? I also saw that he had, that bungee was connected to his coiled paddle leash back here on his fish hatch. And so he said that it was in fact a paddle leash that goes up to the bow. And I started thinking about it and thought, you know, that is the right place to connect. If you get kicked out of the kayak, you probably want to separate from the kayak a little bit, get yourself some distance. And then the other thing is that when you're in the water, you don't want to be tethered to the kayak such that the waves are going to broadside the kayak. All it's going to want to do is roll it. So if you're tethered to the bow, when you are in the water, potentially the kayak is going to get in front of you, and so now you're tethered to the bow, and the kayak should be able to basically just ride up over the waves that may continue to break over you. So I wasn't sure how Carnster had his attached, and I started thinking about it, and I came up with this little toggle mechanism down here in the footwell. So the bungee is tied to the carry handle up here in the front. Get the paddle out of the way. So the bungee's tied to the carry handle up in the front, and then it comes back down here, and it's anchored on the other side to this toggle. And so what happens with this toggle is that if you do get kicked out of the kayak, chances are it's going to be a fairly decent separation, and so the force basically just pulls that toggle out of the foot pedal guides. And so now you've got quite a bit of length here for your attachment, and you're attached to the bow. And it works really well. I've been out in the open water 3 or 4 more times, and I do still struggle coming back in. I typically get dumped somewhere into the shore break, and last time I was out I had this toggle in, and it just worked really well. So this thing's just made out of a piece of engineered plastic. I think that this is glass reinforced nylon, and the end of the paddle leash basically just slips over it pretty easily. I turned down a couple of stubs on either end. You can see that this end here is a little bit bigger in diameter than this end here. And then I milled a flat in it so that I could mount this saddle on there, and then just factory screws that came with the saddle anchored in. So to use this thing, what I do is the bigger diameter post on the end there, you can see it will not slide into the foot pedal bracket. You have to actually stick it in from the side, and then this other side over here, I hope you can see that, it's small enough to where it does slide in. So it clicks in there, and now this whole thing is anchored in, and it's not going to come out until it gets a good enough jerk. And what'll happen is that this side over here is what pops out, and then the whole thing's released. So I'm pretty happy with this modification. It's working really well. And I think that's about it right now. So I really can't say enough good things about Stealth. This boat is exactly what I was looking for. Living a mile away from the coast, it gets out through the surf just perfect. It's really easy to pack up and get on the road with quickly. The live bait well works great, and it is unbelievably comfortable to sit in for hours. It doesn't look like it, but the ergonomics of how the seat bucket and footwells, and maybe it's just my size, but I fit in this thing absolutely perfectly. Love it. I highly recommend, if you're interested in getting something that you want to go into the open water with, this is the craft to get. Oh, one other thing. If you do get one of these things, there's this company that sells these V-bars called Good Boy Kayaks, and these V-bars are a great way to transport this kayak. So the set that I have, I've got a deep V in the back, excuse me, extra deep V in the back, and a deep V in the front. And this main aluminum bar, it stays mounted onto my factory roof racks, but then when I'm done, you pull these pins, the V-bar comes out, and then they give you these caps to put onto the V-bar. So when you're just driving around, all you do is have an aluminum bar bolted down. They work great. They're Good Boy Kayaks. There, if you want to do a screenshot, Cliff is the owner. Great guy. When I got mine, I got a standard V, and then the deep V that's in the front didn't work, and Cliff hooked me up, sent me those extra deep V's, and works great now. Oh, the other one is to get for these things. This is a great trolley. So it's a Wilderness Systems. Perfect trolley for this kayak.